Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé bears all. Let's watch.
Involved in that recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Did I understand that you told our producers that you have never had an enjoyable sexual experience?
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I was suspecting based on what she was saying. Of course, I can't know, but I'm really glad that Sean asked that question, because this gives us another opportunity to talk about this, that for many people, regardless of gender, probably a higher percentage of women, but really anybody, can live a life, one, obviously if they're abused growing up. So there's a number of paths to this experience. One, I will say, is that some people just aren't really sexually oriented. We call some people asexual or demisexual. There are people who we believe to be biologically or developmentally such that they have a difference, a difference from the norm. It seems like maybe 1 to 8% of people are like this, where they either have no interest in sex or a very attenuated interest in sex, and they will notice themselves being very different from others around them, particularly as they start to date. They want to be romantic with people. They might want to marry someone, but they're just not interested in sex, and they can sort of take it or leave it, or sometimes it's just an aversion. And this is not because of abuse. This is just because of who they are. It's just a preference. It's like some people like spaghetti and some people don't. Some people like sex, some people don't. And there's a sizable percentage. And we have been traditionally oppressing them by saying there's something wrong with you. You just haven't had the right kind of sex, when in reality, it's just their preference. And so that's one path. I don't know if Stephanie's going to talk about that, but so that's one path. Another path is being abused, that you will associate, for very obvious reasons, sexual activity with pain and terror. And so as you enter sexual activity in your teens or your 20s, all that trauma comes flooding back as you're having a consensual interaction with someone, and you have intense fear, which absolutely can not always, but it often does interfere with enjoying yourself, obviously. So that's another path to someone at the age of 30 saying, I've never had a good sexual experience because of that associated emotion I feel when I enter. The other thing that you can have in addition to that is there are a lot of people, particularly women, who have had a string of abusive relationships, sexually included, or relationships with men who just didn't care about the woman's experience because of socialization and misogyny and this sort of thing, and sex negativity and blah, blah, blah. And so you could either come from a background of sexual abuse or a background with no sexual abuse and just had a string of just very unsatisfactory relationships, kind of bad luck in terms, because it's hard to know when you start dating someone, it's hard to know whether or not they're going to be a good communicator in bed, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that's another path. And there are other paths too, but it's not uncommon. And I've worked with a lot of clients in this situation and it's a great question to ask that Sean just asked. If you're a therapist, if the topic is present, it's a good question to ask. Have you ever been not in distress? On a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 means no distress and 10 means your head's about to explode with distress, what's the lowest number you've ever been while having sex in your entire life? You'd be surprised. Some people say, oh, I bet, the lowest I've ever been, maybe 3.5. Like the best, most wonderful, relaxing sex I've ever had, I still had about a 3.5 distress level. That tells us something, right? And to the person that lives that life, not always, but they often believe, well, isn't that just how it is? Isn't sex supposed to be stressful? Isn't sex scary and fraught with all sorts of terrible things? And optimally, no. Now, it depends, and there's paths that are varied, but what I would hope is that everyone understands that you deserve, if you want to have this kind of sex, you deserve to have sex that it doesn't have any distress, that feels warm and loving and safe, like someone cares. And if you wanted to say something, you could say something. And you're okay just how you are, and your body's okay, and the way you have sex is okay, and there's nothing wrong with you. you deserve to have that if that's what you're looking for. Most people are. And it's a tragedy when people, for various outside reasons, don't get that, because it can be such a wonderful thing. So for Stephanie, she's saying, I've never really enjoyed sex before. Hopefully we can get into it, because this could be a good opportunity for all of us to reflect on our own lives and our own, all y'all out there right now. Some of you I know are couples watching this right now. Think about what has been on your mind sexually that you want to say. Evaluate why you're holding back saying that. I tell my couples that if you're not talking about sex periodically, like where you really get into the nitty gritty, like, okay, when we do this, like when you do, I've been thinking that I kind of wanted this a little bit more. Like if you're not having that conversation frequently, there's probably something wrong. Now, not always. Some people just really know how to communicate nonverbally and listen nonverbally, if you will. But, there's usually not a harm to bringing that up. But anyway, let's see what Stephanie says.
Never. Yeah. By myself. I've had enjoyable sexual experiences by myself, but never with other people. And that's also a problem.
So I don't know about Stephanie, but there is a correlation between avoidant attachment and self-love, self-activity. I don't want to get flagged by YouTube by saying certain words. I'm trying to avoid certain words. But anyway, and maybe if some of your kids are watching, which I would find not to be the best idea, because this show gets into some adult themes. But anyway, so I don't know about Stephanie, but we're hearing some indications of possibly, what would I say? How would I characterize her attachment style? I mean, she definitely seemed preoccupied in the past, but some people have a combination of preoccupied and avoidant, meaning preoccupied where you're really leaning in and chasing and clinging and desperate and afraid. The foundation of preoccupied is you're constantly afraid of losing someone because you have lost a lot of attachments growing up. So you're hypervigilant. And then avoidant is I give up. I give up on people. I'm fine on my own. Those people tend to be more of self-love reliant. And it can be kind of a strength, but it can also be very limiting and habit forming. So on one hand, Stephanie on the show with Erika seemed to exhibit a lot of hypervigilance and fear, perhaps distorted fear of losing Erika. I don't know if it's distorted, but there were signs of it. We're also hearing that she is taking 2.5 years off we don't know about if she took 2.5 years off from romantic relationships, but at the very least she's taking 2.5 years off from sexual relationships, and she is very happy on her own sexually, which are signs of potentially avoidant attachment, of just like, look, I'm good on my own. I don't need other people. Maybe she'll go into detail more.
Sexual being because of my social media. And I get it. I like to dress sexy. I like to feel sexy. There's a difference between sexy and sexual.
Yes.
And so I feel like I am sexy and I can act sexy, but to be intimate and sexual with another person, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. And I was under the impression that she was being criticized a lot for what people saw as an incongruence there, which is ridiculous. People can be whatever they want to be sexually. They can be extremely out there on the internet and extremely reserved in the bedroom. That's okay. Like, we understand that people are allowed their lives and they can be what they want to be.
Song that you wrote called Ode to 90 Days. Why did you write that?
It's a self-reflective song about how the trip with Erika went down. And I think it's my chance to really take accountability for some of the things.
Oh.
Interesting. I'm encouraged. So she's saying that she wrote a song that she is taking accountability. So let's hear. I'm really curious.
I know that this is crazy, but that doesn't even faze me. Erika, come to America.
I guess that makes sense that would be the chorus. Erika, come to America. That was part of their conflict is that Erika wanted to stay in Australia. Stephanie wanted to come back to the States. So Erika, come back to America. Yeah, or come to America.
Not ready to be what you expect of me. I am not your princess, was perhaps a little rude. But why'd you have a dating app if I meant anything to you?
All right, so she says she's going to take accountability. She's saying that to Erika about the dating app. And she's saying, why are you on a dating app if I'm anything to you? I thought Erika explained that. Now, I'm not there. Maybe Erika is a big jerk face. I think someone even commented below that if they zoomed in on Erika's phone, there was something suspicious about her phone. So maybe Erika was up to no good. I don't know. Let me know what you think of the comment. I thought that Erika was, from what we saw on the show, I thought she was genuinely into Stephanie. I think it would be rational for Erika to be like, well, I don't know if things are going to work out with Stephanie. Who knows? I just, we barely know each other. So maybe Erika was kind of holding out a little bit of options there, which, and maybe she lied about it. I don't know. But that was my impression, was that Erika was in it to win it for the most part, but, a little bit skeptical. And then very quickly the fighting began, and I thought Erika was very quickly like, oh no. That was my impression. But anyway, she says she's going to take accountability, which I was very encouraged by. Let's see what she can say here.
Erika, don't come to America. We're not Kenny and Armando, but at least we had some fun though. Erika, don't.
Yeah, I would say you're definitely not Kenny and Armando. And I'm reminded of, to have gay and bisexual relationships on this show. Was Stephanie and Erika the first? And how I remember a lot of gay and bisexual people commenting, saying like, ugh, like we've been waiting a long time to have a relationship like this on the show. And look at it. But you have Kenny and Armando.
Don't come to America. Friends all seem to hate me. They're surprised you wanna date me. And me too. And me too.
All right, so then she says, your friends all seem to hate me and they're all surprised you want to date me. Well, if you watch that whole scene, I mean, okay. She said she was going to take accountability, and I thought she'd say something like, I, at times, was a little too this or that, and I apologize. I thought, there'd be something like that. So maybe that'll be in here somewhere.
And me too.
Oh, it went right over. She is taking accountability right now, in a sense. So I think what she's saying, and I'm sure some of y'all heard that, was she's saying, your friends were all confused as to why you wanted to date me, and me too. Well, that's a nice turn of phrase. She's saying, I'm also surprised that you want to date me, which lends itself to the hypothesis I had about Stephanie, was a life, or at least significant chunks of her life, of betrayal and abandonment and being treated poorly. We don't know about her history, but at the very least we knew that her trauma, she was absolutely traumatized by being shoved into an English-speaking class at the age of, 6 or 7 or something. And she didn't speak any English. And she said for months, she just sat there terrified, just imagine that. Just left in a school that you don't speak any of the language and no one there speaks your language. I mean, that is going to take a toll, to feel ostracized, to feel like you can't trust other people. You can't, and you're the weird one, So at the very least, that was a trauma, but there could be additional traumas that make her believe that she will be abandoned, that she's quite sure that abandonment is around every corner, that someone dumping her, that someone not wanting to be with her, that's around every corner. And as soon as there's a little, and this is a common schema, by the way, abandonment schema, rejection schema, you have this belief, just like, it's going to happen. It's happening right around the corner. It's happening right now. And by the way, therapy is a wonderful place to have a corrective experience and to heal from that and to change one schema. Because the problem is, when you have that schema, you are hypervigilant and assuming that rejection is happening when it might not be. The dating app is a prime example. If you assume that abandonment is around every corner and that you're going to get dumped at any moment, seeing a dating app is like, there it's happening. And then the pain that you feel of just like, oh, it's happening again, and then the anger kicks in, right? Whereas if you don't have that schema, you'll be a little concerned, like, whoa. And then Erika explains, and you're like, oh, okay. Because you're not hypervigilant and you're not assuming abandonment. And so I wonder if this lyric is illuminating that part of her. That's like, I'm surprised you want to date me too, because no one wants to be with me, and life has shown me that, which would explain the reactivity that she had. Is that what she's saying? Let's rewind. Let's hear that lyric.
To America, my friends all seem to hate me. They're surprised you wanna date me, and me too, and me too.
I mean, it's heartbreaking, really, to the lyric. Your friends are surprised you want to date me, and me too. I'm curious as to what is more there. She seems like to have grown since the last time we saw her. And so I don't know if this is like a couple years later. So, and maybe taking a break from relationships, but she's going back on the dating life, single life. Maybe that will trigger her. But anyway, so, I mean, maybe we'll hear more from her around this. I hope that she doesn't think that she's undateable. And I hope that she doesn't think that she's inherently abandonable, because that's what will create the hypervigilance and the easily triggered and the hostility. So, I don't know. This is, I feel really sad for her, honestly, because what I'm hearing is she's never had a satisfactory sexual relationship. I think she's around 30 years old. And maybe she's never had a satisfactory romantic relationship with anyone. She seems to live a pretty isolated life. And, that just, she seems to thrive online. So maybe that's, a bit of a connection. But I don't know. She seems like, she seems like she deserves to have what we all deserve, which is, if we want this, someone who loves us, someone who we can depend on, someone who prefers us over other people, someone who wants to be with us, who wants to spend the rest of their life with us. If that's what we're looking for, we deserve that. And, I feel bad for her, and maybe she'll find it.
And me too. And me too.
I will say, production-wise, the piano, in my preference, was way too low in the mix. All you heard was saxophone, flute, and violin, which was an interesting kind of arrangement, because usually you need some kind of rhythm instrument like a piano to kind of lay the foundation. But it sounded almost like an art song in that way, which is interesting. But I would have wished a little bit more of the piano. Anyway.
Oh my gosh, that was beautiful, Stephanie. Amazing. And it certainly broke down your relationship with Erika point by point. I know there was probably...
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.